Did SJWs ruin the music scene? Hey, it's Prince of Queens, and due to the fact that a number of people have asked me to make a whole video on this topic, and just tonight, a friend of mine jokingly sent me a link to a Facebook event that is for Pride Month, which is literally called Get Woke, non-ironically, I figured it was time to finally give my thoughts. As subscribers to my channel may or may not know, I actually had a career in music both as a DJ, which I mostly stopped doing when I was around 21, oddly enough when I was just old enough to easily get into most venues that I could have potentially DJ'd at, and then I continued as a producer, singer, and songwriter. My early 20s through early 30s was filled to the brim with constant music making, with countless people performing, and then karaoke and dancing for kicks. I did it a lot more than I did theater, in fact, and I was signed on a record label and everything. If I have a reason to trust you, I can link you to some stuff that is online, and I do plan on releasing some stuff on YouTube eventually. Regardless, I like to think I know the music scene pretty decently, and I know personally numerous world-famous people that a lot of you might have heard of, but I refuse to name drop for several reasons, probably the biggest being that I don't want to lend hints that might give up my anonymity on the internet from my channel. So, did SJW culture ruin the music scene? In particular, the indie music scene, which I was a part of, which was very much thriving late last decade and early into this decade? Well, the short answer is, in my opinion, SJWism did come along and ruin the indie music scene that was fostered mainly by way of MySpace and blog promotion last decade. However, it was on its last limbs anyway. The metaphor about AIDS and pneumonia is suiting for this instance, except normally when people use this metaphor, they say something to the effect of SJWs and feminists being the AIDS, and then Islam being the pneumonia that potentially threatens the Western world. In this case, the AIDS that weakened the music scene was actually the oversaturation of listenable music, made possible by way of technology, which led to an already dismal possibility for musicians to get paid, drying up into becoming basically impossible to make any money ever. Now, it was already practically impossible to get paid in the 1990s long term, when musicians would end up in debt to their label and be put on tour for basically the rest of their entire lives, and maybe they would end up whoring themselves on reality television. However, last decade, due to things like MySpace, Vice Magazine, and Pitchfork.com, a new breed of indie musicians burst on the scene, which were mostly rock and electronic oriented, with the occasional hipster hip-hop artist sprinkled into the mix. This created a thriving circuit of festivals all around the world, which tended to have practically the same lineup at each one, but could make that list of 100 or so bands a living because tickets were expensive, and each band played multiple festivals a year. However, even that has seemingly started to dry up over recent years as small venues have mostly closed, the electronic acts all started sounding the same, and contemporary rock music has seemed to largely become extinct. A few things to keep in mind in regard to that is simply fashion. Rock and roll was in style most of last decade, but not as much this decade. Also, it became super easy for people to create electronic and fusion type music in their bedroom, and creating good rock music is difficult and expensive because it requires a lot of practicing and practice space. Not to mention recording costs, which are mammoth for full bands with real drum kits. But then, with the advent of countless bedroom producers working with just one or two microphones, if any microphones at all, came an oversaturation of that type of music. AKA, every white guy you knew claimed to be a house, electro, or techno producer, but basically none of them were really any good. Sure, they could make a techno or electro track that you could casually listen to at a bar without wanting to throw your drink at the DJ, but the music was generally completely unremarkable, and most of the reason that these people got gigs as DJs were simply because they had a good business sense and could backscratch other untalented DJ producers with favors. You book me to play and make a flyer for it, and I'll do the same for you. Even more annoying was that a lot of the random white guy DJ producers who were really non-talented musically, but happened to be relatively professional when it came to the business end of things, they often seemed to also resent the more talented musicians. I certainly was treated like crap by a few of these people more than once, and I saw them do it to other people who made genuinely good music that people actually liked. I think it was some combination of simple jealousy based on the fact that writing good music will always be really hard, and the non-talented people realized, after making a handful of throwaway house or techno tracks, that they simply did not and would not ever have the talent to make something that might be remembered in 10 years' time. But even more so, these non-talented business-savvy DJ producers, who were often more or less fucking yuppies, seem to resent the talented musicians because talented musicians tend to be a bit more crazy, personality-wise, and a lot more social, and they don't conduct themselves in the same type of way that the yuppie DJ producers do. Good musicians very often like to party, like to get wasted, and a lot of the time you can find them getting silly and partying with the crowd after their sets at their own shows, because they were doing music because they loved it in the first place. They loved the show, they loved the crowd, they loved dancing, they loved partying. Whereas the yuppie dudes frown on this behavior, because they view the music scene as yet another vestibule of their professional life. I'm not saying that a certain level of professionalism as a musician isn't necessary, but the stereotype of the brilliantly talented partying rock star exists for a reason, and people should expect a bit of that when they enter into the music scene, as opposed to wanting to turn the music scene into a nighttime version of the professional world. That all said, the music scene was already in a dire spot early this decade, because the brand marketing yuppie assholes had basically taken over all aspects of the scene, as they were more organized and better at setting up shows and making flyers, etc. And the real talented people largely just gave up on music, or ended up with drug problems. Then, the SJW thing happened and it was all over. The white yuppie DJ producer dudes got demonized, and I'll be honest, it was kind of nice to see a few of these guys get hated on, because they did take their fucking money and spend it on fancy gear and computers and stuff, buying nice programs, only to become a pale imitation, music-wise, of what the serious musicians had been making for decades. It's like, congratulations on spending $10,000 on gear to make what I can make with freeware, and then having the money to self-release. Get fucked. Still, who were these yuppie DJ producers replaced by? Well, in most major urban centers, a lot of aspects of the music scene became yet another game of the oppression Olympics, due to the SJW shit. But that was really awkward, of course, because when it comes to music, some people are simply not talented, and you don't want to listen to them. I mean, seriously, you'd think that DJing off a laptop cannot be all that hard, but you'd be amazed by the way that some of these intersectional feminist queer DJs can fuck it up. Not to mention the crowd that goes to their events tends to be allergic to legitimate fun. Also, one should keep in mind that although SJWs glorify black culture as much as they possibly can, They also can get rather touchy when it comes to the lyrics of a lot of hip hop and R&B songs. So as time went on, less and less songs were allowed to be played at these venues and parties. And again, SJW geared hip hop tends to be pretty shit. So if all you can play is SJW hip hop, your party is going to suck. So yeah, if you've wondered what happened to the music scene, that's a shortened version of what I think happened. Because yes, it's not in a very good place right now. I am thinking, optimistically though, personally, that there will be a new indie rock revival coming up soon because people will always love rock music and it's been gone for far too long. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section and stay tuned.